Hi everyone, in today's quick tip video I'm just going to be doing a kind of clean recording of something that I covered in a YouTube Sunday night live stream in the last few weeks. Now this all came about because somebody messaged me and said that they'd made a template in this template maker program which is free here on the internet, and when she printed it out, it printed out at its correct size, but when she saved the file as an SVG, a cutting file to use with the ScanNCut, it cut smaller. Now I have done a previous video or live stream in the past, I can't remember when, but it will be here on my YouTube channel, showing how to use this template maker. And I don't use it very often, but I remember that when I did use it, I didn't have any problems. But it's probably because I was only using a small box. So while we were chatting in the live stream, it kind of occurred to me that maybe it's because the size of the box that the person was trying to make was too big once it was sent to the machine. Because obviously, as you know, we can only cut up to a size of up to 12 by 12 on a 12 by 12 mat. I think it's something like 11 3/4 by 11 3/4, something like that. And then obviously we can cut on a 12 by 24 mat, but again, we're still restricted to, I think it's 11.75 by about 23.5 or 23 3/4, something like that. Anyway, we got it figured out. So today I'm a quick, clean recording and hopefully show you how to overcome the problem if you have made something that then is shrunk down to fit on the mat. And hopefully I'll show you the finished cut project at the end. So for anybody that doesn't know, the website is here, templatemaker.nl. So if you just put that into your Google or whatever search box you use, this is what you see. And then there's all these pictures across the top, which are all the kind of, types of box or package or whatever that you can make within this program. But then there's also, coloured images. Now, what the person was trying to make was a box with a lid. Okay, so that's this one here over on the left. So I'm going to select that, and then it will instantly bring up some default parameters and show you what the box and the lid will look like. And you can change the parameters that you work in. So by default, I think it automatically always defaults to millimeters. You can change it to centimeters, if you prefer to work in either of those. I prefer to work in inches, so I'm going to change mine to inch. Now again, the next section down says length, width and height and lid height. And again, the clues to what you put in the boxes here are over here on the left in the diagram. So it shows you the length, so that's what you would put in here, the width, the height, the lid height and everything. I'm not going to go too much into all the different options that are here. I'm just going to show you the basics, and then hopefully you can, have a play with it yourself. So let's just say that I want to make a box with a lid that will fit some UK A6 cards. Now, an A6 card in the UK is 5 7/8 by 4 1/8. And that's basically half a sheet of our UK A4 cardstock folded in half. And our UK A4 cardstock is 11 3/4 by 8 1/4. So it's slightly different than the US A4 or letter size, as some people I think call it. And it makes just a slightly different finish card. So I think the US card would be 4 by 5 1/2. And as I say, ours is 4 1/8 by 5 7/8. So if I want to make a box for a set of cards made from A4 cardstock, and I know that my finished card is 5 7/8, I'm going to make my length 6 inches. So I'm just going to overtype with 6 and hit enter. The width I want to make it 4.25 because, as I said, our finished card is 4 and an 8. The height, I'm just going to make it an inch high. That, you know, should hold. I would think 4 cards and 4 envelopes, providing they've not got too much dimension. Again, you know, if you've already made your set of cards, just measure the height and adjust your height here. I'm just doing this just for the sake of this video. So we've got 6 by 4.25 by an inch high. That's the actual box. Then I'm going to leave everything else the same. I'm not touching anything else apart from when I come down here to page size. Now, when you click on the downward arrow, it will give you all these different sizes that you can use. And, you know, if you're in the UK, you may think, well, okay, I'll choose A4 portrait or A4 landscape. And if you're in the US, you know, you might do the same US letter in portrait or US letter in landscape. But this is where the problem lies. If you're trying to make a box, in this particular case, let me just come back up here. So we've got a box that is essentially 6 inches long, and then we've got an inch here on either flap, so that's 8. And as I've just said, UK A4 paper or cardstock is 8 1/4, but you can't necessarily always print using the full parameters. It's the same as when we have a 12 by 12 cutting mat. You can't cut something that goes up to exactly 12 by 12. You're restricted by margins. So this is probably why, or I think this is, we've established why the ladies' templates were being shrunk. So just bearing that in mind, you know, when you make a box, you know, think about all the measurements that you've used to make your box and try and establish if they will fit comfortably on an A4 piece of paper or card or US paper or card. Okay, so with that all in mind, as I say, not touching anything. Oh, one thing I forgot to do here, I want to make the lid height 1 inch. So I'm just going to change that. Okay, so I've got a length of 6, a width of 4 1/4. I want my box height to be 1.5, not an inch, sorry, 1.5, and my lid height to be 1 inch. And that way, when my lid goes down on my box, there'll be a little bit of clearance that you can see. The lid is not going to sit flush with the depth of the base, if that makes sense. If you want it to fit absolutely flush, then make your height and your lid height the same dimension. I'm going to have my height slightly shallower than the actual depth of the box. So sorry about that, just for any confusion. So I'm going to leave all those measurements, as I say, as they are now, and I'm going to come down to where it says page size, and I think the default is fit page to drawing, which is not what we want. So in this particular instance, what we want is 24 by 12 for desktop plotter. I'm going to leave the resolution the same, and I'm going to choose SVG. Now, it doesn't matter whether you choose SVG or perforated SVG, because you're still going to have to change the lines that will be your fold lines into dashed perforated lines in Canvas Workspace, irrespective of whether you make them perforated here. Even if you make them perforated here and they show up in Canvas Workspace as perforated lines, if you click on the properties box and select one, you'll see that it will cut as a solid cut line. So you'll just end up with a load of cut bits. You won't end up with what you're expecting. So I'm just going to choose SVG for now, because I'm going to change the lines anyway, and I don't see the point in using perforated. So now I'm going to say create, and that's going to drop that SVG folder into my downloads folder. So now I'm going to open a new tab and I'm going to open Canvas Workspace Online, just because that's my preferred choice. And then I'll show you how to bring this file in and what you need to do. So I'm in Canvas Workspace Online. I'm going to close this box and I'm going to choose New Page. By default, this opens up as 12 by 12. I'm going to come to the Project tab and I'm going to choose 12 by 24. And I'll just shrink it down a little. So now you can see we've got a 12 by 24 mat. Now remember, in the template maker, we had to choose 24 by 12, but that doesn't make any difference. So in the template maker, you choose 12 by 24, and in Canvas Workspace, you choose 12 by 24. So now I'm going to come to the SVG icon. I'm going to come to the box where it says choose file. I'm going to come to my downloads folder and I'm going to find my box that I've just made. Now I've still got one in my downloads folder from when I did the live a few weeks ago, so I just need to make sure I'm choosing the right one. I think it's this one, 6 by 4.25 by, let me just hover over it again, by 1.5 by 1 inch lid. Yes, so that's the one I've just made. So I'm going to say OK. Now it's saying some shapes could not be converted, but that's perfectly fine. It's not saying that the pattern or the file has been shrunk to fit, which is a message you will get if you just choose a 12 by 12 mat and try to open this template. So I'm going to say OK. So just to show you, and this is what I did in the live, before you go any further, and before you waste any time, changing any of these blue lines that you can see here on screen into fold lines or deleting them if you don't want them, I'm going to come to the basic shapes. I'm going to just grab a square and I'm just going to come to the properties box. I'm going to untick maintain aspect ratio and I'm going to make it 4.25 by 6 and hit enter. So this now should be the exact size to fit in this section here, which is my base. And I know this is my base because the flaps on the side here are deeper than they are on here. And if you remember, I made the base 1.5 inches deep and I made the lid only 1 inch. Okay, so I'm going to bring this in and position this directly over that blue line and you can see it fits. So this is how I know that this template should be the correct size now for me to send over to the ScanNCut machine and cut it. So I'm just going to delete that box. So now I'm going to zoom in on the lid. I'm going to use the arrow to deselect the zoom and I'm going to select the box and I'm going to try and select these blue lines. Okay, so I've got the blue lines selected here. Now if I come to the properties box, you can see that they're assigned as a cut or a draw, which is perfectly fine. You can change it to cut only if you want, but it doesn't really matter. But what does matter is that the pattern here under dash pattern is a solid line. So if I leave these lines as they are, this is what the ScanNCut will cut. It will cut all this into bits. And when I said to you in the template maker, if you choose SVG with perforated lines, your lines that show up here probably won't be blue, it'll all be black, but they'll show as dash lines. But when you select them, they'll still show as a cut line here in your properties box. Either way, to me, it's irrelevant whether I choose an SVG or an SVG with perforated lines, because I still have to come into Canvas Workspace and actually physically change it to perforated lines or delete them if I want to score them on a scoreboard or use a ruler and a stylus. Okay, so I've got the center section chosen I'm going to choose the downward facing arrow, and I normally tend to use the third option down. So when I click away now, you can see that that blue solid line has changed to a blue dash line. Now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more because I want to change these lines as well now. So I'm going to deselect the zoom and I'm going to try and select these individual blue lines. Now sometimes it's that the outside areas are on top. So what I'm going to do, it won't let me seem to select this blue line. So I'm going to right click and send to back because this outside section has been selected. So I'm going to deselect, and now I'm going to try and zoom in and select this line. Now, if you can grab more than one at once, it may make it a bit easier for you, but sometimes you can't always. So I've got one selected. I'm going to hold my shift key down and I'm going to come and try and drag and try and select this other blue line. I also got some part of the red there, so I just clicked to deselect. So I've got two blue lines selected. I'm going to come to the pattern and choose dashed and then just click anywhere to deselect. So you can see what's happening. So now I'm going to try and do the two down here. So I think that may have moved when I selected it. So I'm going to just keep clicking until I get it. Hold my shift key down. Now you can see it's chosen the red box again, but I'm going to keep clicking in the hope that I can get the blue box, and the red box has been deselected. So I've just got these two blue lines. Now I can let go of the shift key and choose the dash line. So now if I scroll up, you can see everything that's red showing here on screen will be a solid cut line, and anything that is blue and dashed will be a dash line. So I just have to do now exactly the same for the base. So I just need to get this one down here. So again, I'm just going to zoom in on this section nice and big in the hope I can select it. Now I may have moved it. You have to be careful because all these elements that you can see here on screen, the red and the blue, are all individual elements. This red line on the left here is not actually joined to this red line, but it shouldn't matter. It should still cut with your ScanNCut. It's just that you just have to be careful sometimes when you're selecting them, you can move them. So again, I'm going to come to the properties box. I'm going to change it to a dash line. So on the face of it, it all kind of looks okay. And I think it will probably be all right. So I'm just going to zoom back to 50% now. So the next thing I'm going to do is just click up on the top and drag an imaginary box around everything and right click and make it a group. And that's my lid. And then just double checking that I've got everything that should be a dash line dashed. I'm going to do the same with the bottom one, right click and make it a group. Now, me personally, I've not got a problem with keeping this as, you know, on a 12 by 24 mat. So I would just give it a name up here in the title and then download it. So I'm going to save that into Canvas Workspace, and it said the saving is complete. And if I just hit this backward arrow here and go to My Projects, it will show up here. I've got one from previously when I was doing the Sunday Night Live. So now, with this saved on a 12 by 24 mat, you can either send this over to your machine, which is what I'm going to do, or you could go to Canvas Workspace in the top left-hand corner and you could open a new blank page, which by default will show as a 12 by 12 mat. Then you can go to My Projects and you can drag on the box. Now again, it gave me a message that the mat I was trying to put the file on was smaller than the mat it was made on, okay? But if we just go back to our basic shapes and grab ourselves our square and make this 4.25 by 6 and untick maintain aspect ratio and hit enter and do our test again. So this rectangle is 6 by 4.25 and that's what I asked the template maker, if you remember, to make me in here. And we know this is the base because the sides are deeper. This fits on here, so we know it's still the same size. So we can delete that rectangle. So, and because I grouped them, that was another reason why I grouped them, so that when I bring them onto a smaller mat, I can jiggle them around and overlap them. Now, again, it's entirely up to you. You could save it like this with the same title and send this over to your machine, and then obviously you would have to delete one and cut say the base, and then call the file up again and delete the base and cut the lid. Or if you've got the 12 by 20 format, cut it on your 12 by 20 format. So there are various options. Now, what you can also do, I'm just going to call this box 2 for now, just to save some time, and save it into Canvas Workspace, okay? And it says it's saved. So if I come back up to the top now to Canvas Workspace and come to My Projects, it's easier to see them in here. You'll see here's box 2. So this is the box I've just made that I put onto a 12 by 12 mat. And here's the file that I originally made on the 12 by 20 format. So if I open this, here's my 12 by 20 format, okay? So this is the one I'm going to download just to see what happens when it comes to the ScanNCut machine. So I'm going to hit download. I'm going to use ScanNCut transfer. So I'm going to send it over wirelessly, and it says it's ready. So I'm going to close. So now I'm going to go to my ScanNCut machine and we'll have a look at this file. Okay, so you should now be able to see my ScanNCut screen. So I'm going to go to retrieve data. The file was sent over from Canvas Workspace, so I'm going to choose this icon. And you'll now see on screen, hopefully, my file. Now you can see a section of it here, and you can see there's an arrow, and that means that it's a bigger mat. But you can see that the bottom half of this mat is greyed out. If I hit the arrow button up, you can see this half is white. And that's because this file was made in Canvas Workspace on a 12 by 24 mat. So it's showing you that here by having this little arrow, because you don't normally see it. But the bottom half is greyed out because by default my machine is set up as a 12 by 12 mat. So if I go into the settings, you can see here the cut area, and this is what I was talking about when I was saying about the original template maker. Although we have a 12 by 12 mat, you can only cut up to 11.73 by 11.65, and that's the same with a printer. If you put A4 paper in, unless you've got complete borderless printing, you can never normally print to the full width or height of A4, okay? So if I hit this arrow and change this to my 12 by 20 format and say OK and OK, now when I hit that downward arrow, you can see that the whole mat is white. I'm not going to cut this on a 12 by 24 mat. I'm going to cut it on 12 by 12. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I know that the top is the lid. I'm going to select the lid and hit edit and object edit and go to the size, because I can't remember exactly what size it is. So you'll see here that it's 8.24 by 6.42. So I can get this from a piece of UK A4 card. And then if I hit the base, That's 7.25 by 9.01, so I should be able to cut that as well from A4 card. So you've got options. You can just say okay, 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 and okay, sorry, and get to this screen. You can now save the file into the machine, which I'm going to show you how to do. So hit save and save it into the machine, and it's saved it into the memory, so I'm going to say OK. But if I select this top element and just move it up towards the top left-hand corner, I can now either delete the base and just cut the lid. So I can choose this and I can go edit and hit the trash and say OK, and I've just got the lid. And I can go back into the settings and I can change the cut area back to 12 by 12 and say OK, and that will just cut on a 12 by 12 mat. Then once I've cut this, I would hit the home button and say yes, it's OK to delete all patterns. I would go to retrieve data. I would go to the machine because I saved the file in the machine when I brought it in from Canvas, and it's the last file I saved. And then I can say OK to get it on my mat. I can delete the lid, so I can select the lid, go edit and delete, OK, and just bring the base up and cut that on my 12 by 12 mat. Or I can hit the home button and say OK, and I can go to retrieve data from the machine, jump to the last page because that's where the file was saved, and although I'm still on a 12 by 24 mat here, I can tell the machine to only cut what's in the top half. So if I say OK, and I've still got both elements on my 12 by 24 mat, and you know that you're on the 12 by 24 mat because you've got this arrow which you don't normally have. So I can select the bottom one, I can go to edit, and I can use the directional arrows, and with the bottom one selected, I can move it down so it's in that greyed out area, and I can say OK. If I hit the arrow at the top, you'll see that the lid is still there within the 12 by 12 parameter because that's what's set in my machine. And if I hit the downward arrow, you can see that the other half of it is in this greyed out section. And that means that I can just cut on a 12 by 12 mat, and it will only cut what's in this white area here. So it saves you having to delete, go back home, call up the file again and bring in the next section. It's entirely up to you. I'm just showing you the different options. Because if I click on the wrench icon, you can see that my mat size is set to the 12 by 12 mat. Okay, so now I'm going to load a mat up with a piece of card, and I'm just going to use a piece of plain white card for this. So I'm putting a piece of A4 white cardstock onto my standard mat, and I'm going to load it into the machine. And then if you want to be on the safe side, you can say OK and do a background scan and start. If you want to be doubly sure that your base or lid will fit on the piece of card that you want to use. So that's just scanning through. I don't want to keep moving the camera, so you'll see everything on the screen and then I'll show you it cutting. So I can see now here is my lid, and I can see my white piece of card here. So I'm going to say OK, select and cut. It says there is pattern out of the effective area, The pattern cannot be cut or drawn. OK to continue. Well, we know there's a section outside the cut area because we've put it there. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to select start. So that's saying it's going to take 4 minutes. It might not take that long. It's already gone down to 3 minutes, but it's because of all the dash lines. So I'm just going to let this cut, and then I'll come back and I'll show you. Okay, so that's finished cutting, so I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to take this off the mat, and I'm going to load the next piece and get that cutting before I go any further. So I'm just going to leave the mat in the machine. Here's my cut file, and I'm just going to put that on my desk. I'm going to load another piece of white cardstock onto this mat, and now I'm going to switch the designs. That was my lid that's finished cutting, and my base is down here in the greyed out area, and I want to switch them now. So again, you've got options. You can either select the lid and hit delete using the edit button, or you can just, switch them about. So if I just drag this over to one side out of the way for a minute, and then use this arrow to get to the bottom of my screen where the piece is in the greyed out area, this is the bit I want to cut now. So I'm going to bring this up to the top, and what it's done, because I've got both bits within a 12 by 12 area, it's changed the mat size to 12 by 12. So I'm going to go to the wrench, I'm going to come here, I'm going to say 12 by 24, OK, OK. And the lid I'm going to drag down into this area out of the way. Then I'm going to come back to the settings and say I'm cutting on 12 by 12. So nothing down here will cut. And here is my lid now. So I'm just going to do a background scan and see whether this will fit on this piece of card. So let's see what size it is, I can't remember. So it's 7.25 high, which is fine, and it's 901 wide. So this will fit on my piece of A4 card, which is in landscape on my mat. So I'm going to say OK, 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 OK again, select, cut, and OK. Now, if you didn't want to, mess about swapping the, the bits from the cut to the not cut area, then, just delete and call the pattern up again. But I'm just giving you options to show you how, you can do different things, basically. So I've got the base of the box up here now, and the lid is down here in the greyed out area. So I'm going to select start. Again, it says it's going to take 4 minutes. It probably won't take that long, but again, it's because it's got all the dashed fold lines. So while that's cutting, I'm just going to bring you back to my desk and we'll look at the lid. So here's my lid, complete with all my perforation lines. So if I just find my bone folder, I can now just fold and burnish all these lines. That the template maker put in for me, that I changed to dashed lines in Canvas Workspace, and I can assemble and decorate the box. So for now, I'm not going to bother decorating it. I'm just going to glue it together and let's see if this works. So, just going to bring in my silicone mat, and I'm using my Stampin' Seal Plus, which is a really strong adhesive. It's probably going to be too big for the flaps, but I can fold it over on itself. It will just make it a bit quicker, hopefully. Now, I'm going to use my wet glue. Sometimes with the Seal Plus, it picks up the fibres on your paper. You need a very light hand when you're using Seal Plus. So I'll just use good old Tombow. So basically I'm just going to fold that flap in and bring this corner round and hold it till it grabs. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. As you can probably hear, the machine has stopped cutting. So I'll just glue this together before I mean, it's not going to be glued together brilliantly, but it will do, you know, for the video. And these flaps here, you can make these flaps bigger in the template maker. If you remember, I said I'd just left all the other settings as they were. You know, if you want bigger flaps, then make your flaps bigger. As long as you've got something to glue the sides of your box together, you should be fine. That one's just got the bit of seal on that I put on. So that's my lid, okay, which should be marginally bigger than 6 by 4.25, and it's got the inch depth, okay, because the lid has got to be bigger than the base for it to go on. So I'll just flip you back to the machine so you can see there's no trickery involved or anything. There's my base all cut, so I'm just going to lift this off my mat and bring you back to my overhead. And again, I'm just going to fold and burnish the fold lines. What I might do with this one is see if I can just use regular seal on the flaps just to save a bit of time, save me holding onto all these flaps. If I do it on the silicone mat, it won't stick to anywhere I overhang. Just make it a bit quicker than me standing here holding, waiting for Tombow to stick. So again, fold your flaps in, bring your sides up, just do that again because I didn't get it lined up. Just take your time. Obviously the more time you take lining up your edges, the better your box is going to be. Let me move everything out of the way. So that's my base. As you can see, this was 1.5 inches deep and my lid was 1 inch, and this should now fit together. Now it is a little bit more roomy, I must admit, than I would probably... Oh, it's not bad actually. You know, you may be able to adjust the tolerance within the template maker, but actually it's not too bad looking at it. If it was me, I probably would make it a little bit snugger, but again, it will depend on what cardstock you're using. I mean, because this is just for the video, I'm just using Stampin' Up! Basic White Regular. If you were using Basic White Thick, then obviously the cardstock is thicker, you might get a tighter finish, but it's okay, it works, it's the right size. I've got a pack of cards here that I've been making in recent videos. Just see if I can put them in there. They will fit in nicely even though they've got the plastic bag on them. Here's just a regular card without the plastic bag on. You can see that that fits in fine, and then your lid. So that's your box, all made using a free program on the internet and cut with your ScanNCut machine. Yes, granted, we had to go in and change the lines to dash lines for the ScanNCut machine to cut them properly. But, you know, that took a few seconds to change those blue lines that came in Canvas Workspace to and assign them as dash lines. It would take you probably a lot longer to work out and design a box from scratch than, you know, it does to create it in the template maker and then just go into Canvas Workspace and change those fold lines. So I hope you found that helpful. Please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't already do so, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.